and welcome to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host, and as always, thanks so much for being here. I greatly appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the show. Well, we're going to highlight a wonderful woman that I've discovered that I think that you'll enjoy getting to know. Her name is Cathy Weiss, and she's the town of Clinton, Connecticut's Poet Laureate. So for our Connecticut and international people, I wanted you to know that she's part of the state of Connecticut. So we are thrilled to have her. And Cathy, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Deborah. It's great to be here with you, and for all those watching, it's great to be with you.
And what we had talked about before we started taping is the viewer, as well as your audience, are important. And I'd like to be able to take them back into your background. So why don't you tell us about yourself?
Well, you know, I have a pretty long resume. When you live as long as I do, it gets to be pretty long, but I started in the early 1970s in radiation therapy, and from there I realized that people were going home, older people were going home without many services. So I went back to school and got a social work degree with a concentration in gerontology. Now meanwhile, I always volunteered in the arts. I love the arts. I'm a creator and a maker, very creative in my work. So I always volunteered in the arts. I've served on 10 arts boards. And finally, after being a social worker for a while, I'm really good one-on-one, but I thought, gee, I'd really like to serve more people. So then I began to create community programs and get them funded, and began a career in grant writing and fundraising. Currently, I do have a part-time job as a consultant for foundations. And in the meantime, I am volunteering to be the Poet Laureate. So it's been a long, long journey. One thing always leads me to another thing. But I incorporate all parts of me into what I'm doing.
The Poet Laureate is a term that people hear, but they don't know really what it means. What does it mean?
Well, each town in Connecticut is hoping to have a Poet Laureate. What a Poet Laureate is appointed by the town, and the job of the Poet Laureate is volunteer, but it's to educate and inspire others to bring poetry to the town, and that's what I've done recently with a project that took me over a year that I've been very excited about.
You have some books in your lap. Tell us about them.
Well, the Portraits of Clinton Poetry Project is a project that is near and dear to my heart. What I did for over a year was to give poetry workshops at the high school, the Morgan School, at the town hall. And if seniors wanted to participate but couldn't drive, I went into their homes and taught them. Portrait poetry is a style of poetry. It's an easy place to begin. You don't have to worry about rhyming or metering. And there's basically 3 styles, so I taught the 3 styles, and then I collected poems from my workshops and from people and put them into this anthology. And we had a reading at the Henry Carter Hall Library last month. And the proceeds, we sold some books, but as with all of my books and artwork, 100% goes into my fund at Community Foundation of Middlesex County. And we're going to be planting a tree in downtown Clinton.
Oh, how lovely.
The Clinton Tree Committee received a grant from me. So that's what's happened with this. So it's kind of full circle. So, you know, my social work degree, I went into this a little bit, you know, as my love of people and interviewing them. So that's the Portraits of Clinton Poetry Project. Currently, you can purchase this at Cindy Stevens Fine Art. You can contact me on my website, and I could drop one off to you. You can pick one up at my office. They are on Amazon as well. And if you purchase them through me or through Cindy, I think it's a few dollars less. But.
And how about the other book that you have?
The other book is something that I'm going to be doing May 20th. My mission is to serve all people, bring poetry to everybody, to people that don't even think they like poetry. And so the Carnival of the Animals is a wonderful introduction to children of music, and dance. And I'm going to be reading the poetry of Jack Prelutsky, our United States Poet Laureate, that coincides with this musical extravaganza. It's family fun for 4 and up. It's going to be at Andrews Town Hall, May 20th at 2 o'clock. And again, you can go to Starship Dance Theater for information or reserve tickets. You can also reserve them on my website as well. And if you're someone that doesn't really like to go online and do things online and purchase tickets online, you can call Joyce DeLauro, the director of Starship Dance Theater, at 203-457-0822, and she will reserve tickets for you. But this is, this is interesting because, ironically, it started from a poem by Lord Tennyson, who was the poet laureate to Queen Victoria, and it turned into a whole beautiful extravaganza of music and dance and poetry.
I probably have many viewers that are poets that want to be in book form. How did you go about putting your poetry in book form?
Well, I had some help from my poet laureate intern and interns, and I also did it myself, just edited it myself. It was a learning experience. I had never published an anthology before. It was painstaking, but I was so motivated. I just mainly collected them, edited them, and published them on Amazon. I do know how to do that. So, but it was nerve-wracking, representing so many people, making sure I had all of their work represented correctly. I don't know if that answered your question.
It did, but the second part is, how does somebody become a poet? Is there a way? Do you take classes? What do you do?
Well, I don't have an English degree. I have a degree in radiation physics and social work. I just started writing from my journal. I think I would say keep a journal. And I think I would say if you see any ideas in there to try and write, I don't think you have to worry about what kind of poetry you're writing. There are a lot of groups. Please contact me if you're interested in having a workshop or a writing group. I do run workshops for free as a volunteer in the community as a laureate, and probably will be running some towards the end of the summer. So contact me if you're interested. But I think we're all poets, Deborah. If you've ever seen a sunrise, if you've ever been in love, if you've ever suffered a loss, there's poetry inside you. And that's what I've wanted to do as a poet laureate, is to help people discover what they have to say. And that's why I really like this Portraits of Clinton, because it was all about the people in the book. It's their little stories. It's who they are. And I really liked that. And there's a variety of styles. To become a poet laureate, basically, it's an application process. And I don't really think that you have to be a Nobel Prize winning laureate, as you have to be willing to demonstrate, well, of course you had to been published and be a writer in some capacity. But I think you have to demonstrate your willingness to be a part of your community, to volunteer those hours, to work with the kids in the school, and to mentor.
Your website, you've mentioned it. What will people find? And we'll put up on the screen your website address. What will people find when they visit it?
Basically, my major projects, events, workshops and readings, some past interviews that I've done, a lot of big projects that I've done. I have done things in Connecticut. I've spearheaded projects that nobody else has done. Right now I'm working on the Cathy Weiss Poetry Garden. We just finished The Great Give. My team with the Towers Foundation raised enough money. We're going to start breaking ground in a couple of weeks. This is going to be a destination garden for everyone in Connecticut. And then again, what I was saying before about mixing poetry and art with my background in health and social services. There's going to be things in the garden that just aren't in Connecticut. For example, we're going to have handicap accessible planting beds so that the residents can wheel, and right now they are growing food, but it's not ideal. So they're going to be able to plant right from their wheelchairs, wheel up and plant.
Oh, lovely.
And they're going to be growing food not only for themselves but for the whole community. there is going to be something so unique. Well, the Poetry Garden will be a big central part of this huge destination garden. This garden will include, planting beds, an herb garden, meditation garden, sculpture garden, shade garden, dog park, bocce court. But the Catherine Weiss Poetry Garden will be central. It'll be a place for performances, poetry. I teach workshops down there in poetry right now to the seniors. I also teach in Clinton at the senior housing. So it's something I like to do. So, but the Poetry Garden is going to be very special. It's going to, I really love that the residents are going to be able to be integrated into the community. It's going to be for the whole community. It's going to be open dusk till dawn with security 24/7. And then there's going to be something else unique, council benches where seniors can have appointments with other younger people in the community to mentor, counsel. It's going to be something so different, so great. And I'm so excited about it, if you can't tell. So I'm not excited about it just for me, but I'm excited for just people. It's turning 13,000 square foot of blight between the New Haven Green and the train station into something beautiful. It's going to enhance the environment because trees will be where blight and concrete was before. So it's going to be for the whole state of Connecticut, a destination garden.
The destination garden that you've just mentioned, how did it come about?
Well, it came about by my team at the Towers Foundation. It's going to be adjacent to the towers in New Haven, and it was the idea, and they asked me to come aboard and be a part of it, and I said I would. Been a part of a lot of their projects. Right now, the Catherine Weiss Gallery is there, and it's the only state-of-the-art evidence-based art program for early onset Alzheimer's. And it's designed so that the residents make art, and then it usually sells, it's beautiful, and then they pay for the supplies for the next year's students, the residents themselves. So there's a lot of things that I like with seniors that are validating and have socialization built in, and I've done a lot of things with the Tower Foundation, help them achieve their goals, and they really have a state-of-the-art programming there.
Okay, let's hold that thought. I'm Deborah Gilbert. You are tuned into Arts and Entertainment. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
Attending a local home show or garden expo can provide a one-stop opportunity to gather ideas and meet with potential contractors. Better Business Bureau reminds consumers of the importance of doing their homework before making a financial and contractual commitment. Always be sure that the company you decide to work with has the necessary licenses and insurance to work in Connecticut. Develop a list of questions ahead of time for potential contractors. Consider creating a separate email address for show correspondence. And before signing up for drawings, contests, or services, find out how your contact information will be used. Now, do not feel pressured to buy expensive items or services right away, as returns and refunds can be challenging. Save receipts and other paperwork. Pay for expensive merchandise with credit cards and monitor for unauthorized charges. BBB recommends limiting a deposit to no more than 1/3 of the total cost of the project and then setting up a schedule of payments based on the job's overall progress. Get all details of the project in writing in the form of a contract and request a receipt. Check for discounts and coupons being offered and research vendors at bbb.org.
And welcome back to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host, and as always, thanks so much for being here. My conversation continues on with Cathy Weiss. And Cathy, we were talking during the break about Poet Laureate, what it is we talked about before. What is it that somebody needs to do to be a Poet Laureate? It's throughout the state?
Yes, each town has their own policies. Usually you're appointed by your town council, or the library sometimes has a committee that appoints you. Every town has its own guidelines. Some towns appoint a a laureate for perpetuity. Sometimes they only want a laureate for 2 to 3 years, that's it. Sometimes you have a term and then it expires, and then there's an application process. My term expires June 2024. And so at that time, if I want to reapply, I would reapply, but also other people could apply. And as I said, I'm working with the Connecticut Coalition of Poet Laureates and going to be establishing guidelines for what background you need to become a laureate. So, some background in education, obviously some poetry published, and I think that your willingness to show that you have been a part of your community and will use your role to work in the community. I think that is a big one. Pat Barone was the first poet laureate of Clinton. I'm the second. And she appointed me. She recommended me. And I think a recommendation from your current laureate would go a long way. I'm actually going to run some classes next April, Poetry Month, on how to become a poet laureate, what you need, and talk about some of the criteria. I would love to be poet laureate again, but you know what? I think everybody should be able to apply. And I haven't decided what I may do, but I really do feel that after a few years, it should be able to have people apply if they want to. And most likely, if I'm doing a good job and I reapply, I probably would be appointed, but maybe not. So, every town has its own policy. I don't know what our town is going to do, but if anybody, would like information, there is information on the Connecticut Coalition of Poet Laureate website about becoming a poet laureate.
When you become a poet laureate, are there requirements as to what you must do throughout the year? Do you speak? Do you travel?
My town gave me a job description. Now, I'm a volunteer, and there's no payment. I use the town hall facilities to run workshops, the library to do readings. During the pandemic, I rented a space that had a big porch so I can do things outside because we really couldn't get together. But my requirements on my job description stipulate that I need to do a reading and work with the high school students or work with youth, be a support to them in some way, and maybe do a workshop. And I've fulfilled all that and more. And I'm actually going to be reading a poem on Memorial Day. But I really didn't talk about my work at the high school. Boy, that has been...
Yes, tell us.
I would have paid them to go there. I mean, that was very meaningful to me. When you get to be a senior citizen, mentoring becomes very important. And so I've been there 3 years now, 3 years. 1 year before I was actually a laureate. And I did that on Zoom during lockdown, which was... I'm very proud that I've got a lot of the students published, not only in this publication, but other publications, because during lockdown, there weren't any extracurricular activities. So when they went to apply to colleges, being able to have a book that they were published in really meant a lot. So my work was very meaningful, and the high school has a wonderful English department. I'm very grateful to Leslie Chassé and Eric Bergman, who were the two teachers who put this together and allowed me to come into their classes and be a part of the team to teach poetry. It was really a wonderful experience.
How are the young people doing? Are you finding that they want to write poetry?
Well, I think that I don't know if they want to or not, but they all got involved. They all did the work. The whole class is put in here of my last class. So obviously, and the poems are beautiful in here. I mean, we have first-time poets, people who never wrote a poem, all the way to very experienced poets, like I mentioned Pat Barone, Lee Jacobus from his new book, who is, as we all know, Professor Emeritus in English. So it's a variety of people in here. But talking back, backtracking a bit about children and poetry. The state of Connecticut Department of Social Services received a grant where they asked poet laureates throughout the state to work with foster children who are at risk, maybe depression, maybe other things. Because studies have proven, and there's a body of research showing how poetry and working with poetry and writing poetry can really alleviate a lot of the problems our young people may be experiencing. Bullying is a big problem, leading to depression. There's a lot of the kids really deal with a lot of things I never had to deal with in high school. So, it's been an honor to help them in any way. And of course, I did volunteer to work with a foster child. I'll be matched through the state this summer. So, whether the students really like to or want to or have trouble, it does benefit them. So I hope we see more programs like this.
Do you find there is a future in poetry with people of all ages? Is it something that will stay with us as time moves on?
Well, I think so. I think it's something, why I love it? I'll speak for myself. I love it because I can write a poem, faster than I can write, a short story or a book. I can write a poem. I always have that skill. I always have an outlet for my feelings. And, it's funny, one of the poems that I assisted an older person in writing about their life, they actually said to me, "Would you read this at my funeral?"
Oh my.
And and it's like there's ways that you can convey something in a poem. There's a part of you that comes out and connects. I really like to write to connect. That's the social worker part of me. And Deborah, in my career before poetry, I've been a part of people's most intimate moments in their life in radiation therapy and social work. So I really do have a way of tapping into people's feelings. And I think that if everybody has their own style, their own little niche, I think that probably would be mine.
Other television stations have felt that it was a positive for you to come on and talk to their global audience. How has it been being interviewed on other television stations?
Well, it's been great from the standpoint that I'm really glad that we're having more awareness of poetry. And I'm glad that we're having more awareness of the role of a poet laureate. We want to have a poet laureate in every town. In fact, Westbrook, Killingworth, Madison do not have poet laureates, and I'm going to try to work with those towns to help them get a poet laureate. Saybrook has a poet laureate, which I think you've had her on.
Yes, I have.
Guilford has a wonderful poet laureate who's done great things in the schools. So I guess that what I'm going to be focusing on in my last year is helping people become a poet laureate, whether in their towns or my town. I think that's a focus that I have. I have a 3-year plan, and that's sort of on my agenda for my last year, to make sure that my role will continue.
As we start to get close to running out of time, are there thoughts that you would like to give to my viewer?
I think that, as far as poetry goes, any art form, just take a few minutes a day and write down something. It doesn't have to be a poem, but as I say, journal. And if you see some recurring thoughts that seem to be important to you, try to write that out. There are a lot of poetry workshops at libraries, and again, you can go to my website, contact me, I'll put you in touch with a group. If I have enough interest, I will start a group. I'll volunteer my time and start a group. I ran many groups so far as Poet Laureate in Clinton, all ages, and be happy to help anybody get started. So I guess the key thing is to go to my website, see the kinds of things I do, contact me. Make sure you get the information on my website for information how you can help the Poetry Garden, the Cathy Weiss Poetry Garden.
That's right.
A direct link to help. On my website. There's also information on the Carnival of the Animals, which I'm excited about. And You know, that's going to be lots of fun. So if you have grandkids, you know, that'd be perfect activity for a 4-year-old and up.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here. It's been wonderful.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Deborah.
I really appreciate your time, and I know my viewers really benefited from it.
Thank you.
And I want to thank all of you for being here. I'm Deborah Gilbert. You have been tuned in Arts and Entertainment. We've been talking about poetry today. Hope you've enjoyed it. Have a super day today. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time.